Good morning, Lori and everyone, and thank you for being here today for our Programs of Study 101, Introduction to SOAR in Pennsylvania. My name is Carol Lugg, and I work with the Department of Education and the SOAR statewide agreements. And that's okay if you're feeling unfamiliar with the terms SOAR, statewide agreement, programs of study. That's why we've offered a 101 course for those of you who are new to all of those terms. Presenting with me today is Ashley Hoke, and Ashley works with the programs of study and provides leadership and guidance for those career and technical education programs that have been designated as programs of study. So to help us steer our presentation, or the second half of our presentation today, we're going to ask you to, in the chat box, to please enter the following information, whether you're an administrator, an instructor, or other. And you can feel free to elaborate on the other if you'd like. Also, if you work at the secondary or post-secondary level, and if neither of those apply to you, then again, feel comfortable using other. And lastly, we're going to ask you to rate your program of study or SOAR experience, 1 or 2 if you know very little or you know a little bit. Again, this is what this presentation is intended to help you folks feel more comfortable with all of those terms. And if you're well versed with a 3, we hope that perhaps you'll pick up some information that will help you with the transition from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5 and make sure that we're all running on the same road with Perkins 5. So thank you. And while you're busy doing that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ashley.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Carol said, I am Ashley Hoke, and I'm a CTE2 advisor at the Bureau who works with programs of study, task lists, Perkins. And today we just wanted to give you a brief intro and overview into, the Pennsylvania version of programs of study, which is called SOAR, how to navigate through the PDE SOAR site, task lists and the revision cycle of the task list, and how students can take advantage of post-secondary opportunities after completing a SOAR program. So first, I wanted to provide a little bit of background into the history of Perkins and why it's important to your school. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Perkins funding. Even though the Act has gone through many changes over the years and has evolved into what we now know as Perkins 5, the purpose of Perkins has never changed. Each time Perkins was reauthorized, it focused on the progressive needs of career and technical education at that time. As it stands today, the purpose of Perkins 5 is to develop the academic knowledge, technical and employability skills of secondary and post-secondary students who elect to enroll in a career and technical education program by employing all of the purposes listed on this screen. According to the U.S. Department of Education, federal funding for vocational education started back in 1917 with the Smith-Hughes Act, which remained in effect for over 60 years. Additional legislation for vocational education, now called Career and Technical Education, was introduced as the Vocational Act of 1973. About 11 years later, the Carl D. Perkins Act of 1984 was introduced. This act was named after a House member from Kentucky who was a huge supporter of education. This act amended the Vocational Education Act of 1963 to extend and revise current programs, as well as establish new programs that highlighted job skills through technical and vocational education. Perkins has been reauthorized 5 times over the years. Each reauthorization included more and more support for CTE education and was again updated to meet the federal and state needs at that time. Perkins 2 included the addition of career guidance and counseling, business education and labor partnerships, tech prep education, and the improvement of facilities with the acquisition of new equipment. Perkins 3 included the Workforce Investment Act of 1998, which reformed adult education and vocational rehabilitation programs that created a one-stop system of workforce investment. And Perkins 4 provided separate local and state performance accountability systems, core indicators of performance for secondary and post-secondary, state performance level reports, and it established programs of study, which is why we're here today. The most recent authorization of Perkins funding, or Perkins 5, as you may know it in your school, was reauthorized in 2018, and it's authorized through fiscal year 2023. This new version of Perkins provided $1.3 billion annually for career and technical education programs to expand opportunities for every student to choose, explore, and follow career and technical education programs of study and career pathways to earn credentials of value. So when Congress looked at reauthorizing the Perkins Act in 2018, they realized the importance of high-quality CTE programs for the future of our country. They wanted to invest in programs that prepared students to be successful, not only in furthering their education, but also their careers at state and local levels. Most of the law is similar to the 2006 Perkins Act, but there are some big differences to note. In a few minutes, Carol will get into a little more detail on how we have accomplished aligning the programs of study with state, regional, and local needs, as well as other Perkins requirements such as accountability for results and program improvement at all levels. The need for increased coordination within the CTE system, a strong academic and technical integration, and connections between secondary and post-secondary, as well as the inclusion of business and industry. Perkins 5 also expanded career exploration and development activities in CTE to the middle grades. It also broadened the definition of special populations. So Perkins 4 had already classified students with disabilities, students from economically disadvantaged families, students preparing for non-traditional fields, single parents, out-of-work individuals, and ESL students, all as special populations. Perkins 5 expanded the definition to include homeless individuals, youth who are in or have aged out of the foster care system, and youth with a parent who is a member of the armed forces and is in active duty. So now with all that I've given you, all the information, all the background information that I've just given you, how and why are programs of study developed, you may be asking, okay? Well, the definition according to Perkins is a coordinated, non-duplicative sequence of academic and technical content at the secondary and post-secondary levels. So what does that mean? In order for a program of study to be classified as one, it must have all of the characteristics listed here on the screen. It needs to incorporate challenging state academic standards, address both academic and technical knowledge and skills, as well as aligning with the needs of industry in the economy. It must also prepare students to succeed in post-secondary education by offering dual or concurrent enrollment programs with a post-secondary institution, or offer industry-recognized credentials and certificates in high-demand, high-wage occupation if the student decides to go directly into their career field. Currently, Pennsylvania has 42 programs of study. The development of these programs of study satisfies all of the requirements of Perkins 5. And Perkins 5 requires that each local recipient must offer 3 programs of study in 3 different cluster areas. The programs must provide relevant coursework that incorporates elements of secondary and post-secondary education. They must also include coherent and rigorous content that is aligned with challenging academic standards with their career and technical coursework. One of the other requirements of Perkins 5 is that the program of study be offered in a high-wage, high-demand occupation. So how do you know if a program qualifies as an in-demand occupation? Well, the Pennsylvania Department of Labor has created a list called the PA EIDL, which stands for In-Demand Occupation List. This list helps identify careers that are in the highest demand throughout Pennsylvania. It also shows the projected employment needs, as well as the average wages that can be expected for that career, and can be found in the link that Lori is putting in the chat. I do want to mention that not all programs offered at a CTE are necessarily a program of study. Your school may have programs like cosmetology, ag general, or job seeking, to name a few that could potentially be offered at your school. These programs are not considered programs of study and are listed in CATS as career and technical programs. The difference with these programs is that they are not part of the statewide articulation agreement. For example, there is no post-secondary that offers cosmetology, therefore a state agreement can't be created. But secondary schools must work with local post-secondaries to establish a local or alignment agreement. I think this is a great place for me to end and for Carol to start talking about the process of how programs of study are implemented in Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Ashley. And thank you, Lori. It looks like we're going to pause for a moment and look at who's all here today. It looks like we have a good mix of secondary and post-secondary, with maybe the bar leaning more towards secondary, as well as a good mix of administrators, instructors, and those working in other areas within Perkins and programs of study. So again, welcome everyone. Those of you with the ones and twos, we hope that we aren't moving too quickly. And for those of you in the threes, again, we hope that you're finding this a refresher for what's happened with the transition from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5 with what's on our screen, our SOAR program in Pennsylvania. So the SOAR program, and I just want to call out the icon or the image that you see here. Some folks see wings, some see flights of steps, but regardless of what that image conveys to you, it is to represent upward career mobility that is intended through the SOAR program. And again, SOAR stands for Students Occupationally and Academically Ready. And the mission of SOAR has not changed. However, the requirements for participation by the students have changed with Perkins 5, as well as the requirements for post-secondary have changed with the implementation of Perkins 5. And so now we're going to take a look at what some of the benefits are of SOAR. So again, you're going to find this being a refresher of what Ashley referred to as programs of study, because SOAR is the name for programs of study in Pennsylvania. So the benefits of SOAR are to provide a non-duplicative sequence of coursework that leads to technical skill proficiency. And that sequence is intended to be from secondary to post-secondary coursework. It's also to decrease the cost of a post-secondary credential through articulated credit. And lastly, that the student may enter the workforce sooner and be prepared for the in-demand occupations that often have higher technical knowledge base that's expected to work in that career field. So with our benefits, we're now going to go ahead and take a look at the components of the PDE website. And so we have this here, and the PDE website, I think Lori's going to drop that into the chat box. And for those of you who enjoy multitasking, you could, if you want to go ahead and open that up on your own, you may. However, Ashley and I are going to go ahead and go through the programs of study site. So as you see, there is our SOAR images of the wings or the steps. And then also we're going to scroll down to the table. And we're going to go through each one of these areas so that everyone feels comfortable on what they can find. This is the area that most folks scroll down to. I always think of this as the Girl Scout, similar to the Girl Scout cookie order form with our different colors here. So if you get a thoughts of a thin mint while you're looking at this chart, you're not the only one. So let's look over here at the title and the SIP. So that is available there for you to see the program name, which is based on the federal SIP, Classification of Instructional Program name. So that would, again, that's a constant. That's not going to change. You will also see the SIP code, and underlying this link, you would be able to see a document. And on that document, and we're not opening that up today just for ease of and time, but what you would find would be the career cluster that this program is aligned with. You're going to see a brief description of the program, the qualifications for teacher certification, and the occupational competency evaluation that's required for that particular program of study. You'll also see all the way over to the right, the task list. And those are, if you look up a bit, you'll see that the version 22, 23, 24 Every 3 years, this task list is revised, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. You'll also see in the a crosswalk to academics, and you'll see version E. Ashley will be coming out with those shortly, but there are crosswalks to the academics, and these provide the individual task and the corresponding academic standards in reading, writing, and mathematics. And the National Common Core Technical Career Standards are also linked to many of those tasks. So again, you'll see the version E for this particular phase of programs coming out shortly. Also, I'm going to take this moment to stop and look that we are in phase 1. So on this table, you would find, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, but you would find phase 6 all the way at the bottom. So phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, 5, and 6. And those phases are based on the years when these new phases were rolled out. So again, these graduation years are based on when that phase is ready for revision. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But this is a site or a table that includes a lot of information that's used heavily by both the secondary and the post-secondary institutions. You'll also note for those post-secondary attendees, you'll note that we have the secondary school partners. That too will be updated soon, and that allows you to see what secondary schools are offering the programs of study for potential matriculation into your post-secondary program. So again, those will be updated at some point in the future. So I guess the part of me wants to pause right here to ask if there's questions, but we're going to take questions at the end. And we'll answer, again, those questions that you're putting into the chat or the Q&A at the end of our session. So after we've taken a look at this important table that is used quite heavily, let's go back to those task lists and talk a little bit more about how those are updated. So every 3 years, the task lists are reviewed, and sitting at the table to review those are secondary, post-secondary instructors, and industry. So all 3 need to be at the table in order for the task list to be revised. Those revisions that are offered by the secondary, post-secondary, or industry are then made into the updates and revisions to the task list. The task lists are then distributed to everyone, gets another chance to provide their input regarding the task list and what changes need to be made. Then those task lists, the final version then is updated to and posted to the PDE website. Then that task list is distributed to our post-secondary for the new statewide agreements to be established. So they are looking at those task lists and ensuring that they're either aligning with the programs that they've had in the past, where they've had alignment, or looking for potential new alignments to, again, submit perhaps new statewide agreements for programs due to task list revisions can now become a statewide agreement. Those agreements are then posted to collegetransfer.net. And again, I'm going to be going over that in a few screens down the road here. I'll be revisiting the task list. So again, this is a process where everyone has to be involved and is expected to be at the table when those task lists are revised. So statewide articulation is possible, and it's only with partnership with secondary and post-secondary institutions that offer SOAR programs, and they have to agree to the terms and the conditions that are in the statewide articulation agreement. So this document, this articulation agreement, outlines the general conditions that have to be met by the student. So that's their qualification measures that they have to meet. And then the post-secondary agrees to award 9 or more technical credits in the aligned or related program of study. So I'll just point out that the 9 or more is a revision that occurred through Perkins 5, that in order to be a statewide agreement, it must be 9 or more technical credits. And so now we're going to go ahead and look at how do students obtain these opportunities, or how do they know what opportunities are available out there? So first, the student has to pull together their student documentation. So secondary instructors, this is where you would play a role, and the secondary guidance counselors in ensuring that the student has met all of the qualifications. So the student must have a 2.75 grade point average in their technical core coursework. They would have a completed and signed task list. So both the student and instructor must sign the task list. The task list is available, again, at the table that we just visited a moment ago. The end of program assessment that's relevant to that program, be it NOCTI, NIMS, or any other end of program assessment that's used by that program of study. And also copies of any of the industry certifications that have been earned by the student through the program at the secondary level. All of those 4 pieces of paperwork are considered the program of study student documentation. The student then would also get their high school transcripts, a copy of a high school diploma if it's asked for by the post-secondary that they are interested in attending, and submit that paperwork to the post-secondary admissions office where the student is applying. Now, also keep in mind that with Perkins 5, students now have 18 months to take advantage of this articulated credit at the post-secondary institution. Prior, it was 3 years, but it is now 18 months past their high school graduation date that they have to take advantage of the opportunities, the credit opportunities at the post-secondary institution. And so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a trip over to collegetransfer.net, and that web link is also being posted in the chat box. And we are going to search, look at how to search these opportunities for your students. So we're going to do this a couple of ways. So one, we're going to search using the search bar up at the top. Ashley's going to drop down to the PA Bureau of Career and Technical Education SOAR programs. And let's say that I am in I believe it's a communications program we're going to take a look at. And she's going to select grad year 22. And she's going to then search, and we're going to pause here for just a moment. Right up here, Ashley, if you could, correct, thank you. There you'll see the Programs of Study student documentation cover sheet that is available for students in College Transfer. It's also available on the SOAR website, on PDE's site as well. So 2 places to get that information. So now we're going to go ahead. I'm a communications technologies secondary student. I'm looking for my opportunities for post-secondary institutions that will take my coursework. And here you can see the options for Westmoreland, Luzerne, Penn Highlands. Those institutions have statewide agreements with that particular SIP. Now, let's say a student completed and actually we're going to stay right here with communications, but let's say a student completed an HVAC program at a secondary as a program of study and went off to the post-secondary and wanted to enter the electrical program. That student would not receive the articulated credit because they did not remain in the program of study of HVAC to HVAC. However, the student could request this post-secondary institution to consider prior learning assessment to see if any of the coursework that they completed at the secondary level would be relevant and available for prior learning assessment credit at the post-secondary institution. But that's an important concept to stress with students. They sometimes get a little confused about that. They do have to enter the aligned program. Okay, so thank you, Ashley. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to search again. And we're now going to search and we're going to say that the student completed a welding program. And the student graduated in 22. And we search and we scroll down and we go, oh, we see that there are no available articulation agreements. Well, this is where I'm going to ask you to take yourself back to that process for the task list revisions. Those task lists for 22 grads those were revised this past year The post-secondaries are busy preparing their articulations for the 22 grads. We're busy reviewing them here at PDE, and those then will be posted. Hopefully, I would encourage you for these 22 grads for programs in phases 1, 2, and 5 to visit collegetransfer.net again, perhaps prior to the holiday break, and perhaps once again when you return. So this site, the agreements are can be uploaded once the post-secondary institutions have entered the information. So again, while you might see this now that there are none, I can tell you that they are in the queue and they will be processed. And if you were to come back here again in another month or so, you may find post-secondary articulation, or you will find post-secondary articulations listed for those 22 graduates. Okay, now we're going to search at collegetransfer.net another way, and we're going to go to course equivalencies, and we're going to transfer from the PA Bureau, and there it will start to self-populate, select, and now we're going to transfer to, so if you're a post-secondary and you want to see a clean list of your agreements, or let's say you're working as a guidance counselor and you want to see, well, what are the ones at my local or regional community colleges, you may also want to use this search function as well. So let's say we're going to transfer to Harrisburg Area Community College and search. And now you will see only those agreements that are available with Harrisburg Area Community College. So this is another search function that allows you to filter it in a method that's convenient and is helpful to you. So again, this site is available, and it's, again, I want to reiterate to please check back to review these agreements because they are constantly being updated. We currently have over 300 agreements in the system, but again, the next round of agreements will be uploaded shortly, which will put our number probably well over 400 statewide agreements. And so with that, we believe we've come full circle here with the opportunities that are available in career and technical education due to the driving force back to Ashley's beginning, back to the force of federal Perkins and what it has allowed the secondaries and post-secondaries to do to allow opportunities for our students. And so with that, we're going to turn to our question, the Q&A, and we see that there have been some deposited in there. So we will go ahead and start addressing those questions.
Okay, so I see the first question here is, will the crosswalk be uploaded to version E?
Yes, we are currently working on the crosswalks for version E, and we'll have those updated and in the system as soon as we possibly can.
Okay. And I did not see computer programming on the SOAR list. Is that no longer a program of study?
Ashley, do you want me to take that one?
Do you mind?
That's fine. So no programs have been removed from the programs of study. So either we quickly scrolled past that and you did not see it, or it's, again, the federal SIP names are what is used. So while you say computer programming, I'm thinking there's probably programs, that program is there, just not under the term computer programming.
Let me hop over to the chat panel because I think a couple came in there. So if you do have questions, if you could put them in the Q&A panel, that would be great to help us record and keep track of the questions and answers so we can send it out to everybody. Why was the format changed into Word from Excel? I do see that Tamalee Brassington answered that and saying the task lists were changed to the Word format to meet ADA compliance. Is the GPA overall, or does it need looked at each individual year?
It's an overall grade point average for the student. So it's, again, it's important for students to begin understanding their opportunities, and it can be a good motivator for the student at the second, as a sophomore, to begin understanding what's the expected grade point average that they are going to need to achieve in order to take advantage of this opportunity. While I'm with this point, something that I neglected to add is when you are searching, when we were at the welding and you saw that there were no agreements for 22, what you could do if you're at, again, a secondary school is look at the 21 articulation. So just select that you're a 21 grad, and you can look and see what articulations are posted. And there may be articulations very similar to those that are going to be coming through and added for the 22 grads. So again, that's just a little tip to maybe help you realize the opportunities that are available but not yet posted.
Okay, and with schools using a percent for grades, how does a scale of the 2.75 GPA?
I'm sorry, Lori, could you ask that question again?
Yes, I'm not exactly sure what John's asking. With schools using a percent for grades, how does a school scale of to the 2.75 GPA?
That is dependent, I believe, upon the post-secondary institution on how they would do the conversion. But John, we can get back to you with that, with a better answer on that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to move back over to the Q&A panel. John, if you could put your questions in the Q&A, that'd be great. Why does the state mandate 9 credit minimums?
That was, again, through the Perkins 5. And again, it's to create the stronger integration between the two programs so that they continue to look at their curriculum. And here in Pennsylvania, that we create a strong articulation between secondary and post-secondary. And if post-secondary institutions are unable to meet the 9 credit technical minimum, then there is still the local agreements that are available if that's more suitable for that program of study.
Okay. And Kim, many schools say they have a hard time getting students to get the SOAR credits. Many point to the students are unable to complete the task list, or that the students themselves do complete the paperwork requirements. What are your thoughts, and do you know how many students earn SOAR credits per year in Pennsylvania?
We do know that during the COVID pandemic, students were often unable to complete the programs. So the data these past 2 years is going to be challenging because of the COVID pandemic and students being able to complete. Some of the post-secondary institutions have offered opportunities for students to still receive perhaps not all the credits, but some of the credits, and using that prior learning assessment, even though the students weren't considered completers of the program of study. So again, post-secondary institutions were often making those opportunities available. And I believe there were 2 sections to this question. So Lori, the second half of the question.
So it was, what are your thoughts? And do you know how many students earn SOAR credits per year in Pennsylvania? We
do know the numbers, and post-secondaries are expected to enter the data, post-secondary articulated credit is the term that those post-secondaries enter into the PIMS system. So our reported numbers range within, I would say, about the 30s. Actually, they fluctuate year to year, but between 30 to 50 students per year. But again, these past 2 years, the data is not what we would all like, but mostly due to the challenges of COVID and students being able to complete their programs of study.
Okay, great. Okay, many students have already made school choices. Why can't the agreements for 2022 be in place already?
Yeah, it's a challenging juggling act of secondary curriculum, post-secondary curriculum. There are often curriculum revisions that happen at the post-secondary level that they need their time as well. We recognize that that is a challenge. However, we just encourage students to, again, look back at the 21s and know the 20 as if they're a 21 grad and know that often these articulations are renewed and posted again for the new task list group that are out there. And again, just because of juggling all of the secondary to post-secondary calendars, that makes that a challenge. And again, due to COVID, I think this past year was everything lagged just a tad behind what we would like to see.
And I was saying he does not see zip code 110201 and wanted to check under all sections of SOAR. It is also not in collegetransfer.net. That was known as programming. So I believe he's talking about the computer programming.
Yeah. Is that John? I'm sorry, who's?
Al, it looks like John's asking about it, and also Al.
Okay. John and Al, if you wouldn't mind, just again, there's my email, sending me an email following this presentation, and we can follow up with that situation.
Okay, next is the 2.75 GPA overall between academic and technical coursework on high school transcripts, or just a 2.75 GPA for technical program coursework?
Technical program, the 2.75 is for technical
program.
Yeah,
okay.
Technical programs.
Right. Kim said thank you for answering her question. Let me pop over to the chat to see if we have anything else in the chat. So a school needs only to look at the grade for the students at the end of their years at a CTC. I believe you might have answered that one. Why are secondary students given 18 months to transfer credits to post-secondary instead of 3 years?
So the reduction was made, again, because of a student 3 years out. I think we can all imagine 3 years out of your calculus class, your skills may not be as sharp as if you had matriculated directly to the post-secondary. This request, again, was looked at and in discussions with post-secondary. So 18 months, we feel it would allow a student to enter the workforce perhaps for a year, make sure that this is the career field they want to pursue at the post-secondary level, but still be able to take advantage of their credits. So again, the 18 months was a revision with the Perkins 5.
And I do see Mindy, she is also from the Bureau of Career and Tech Ed, put in the chat to everyone that the program, I believe she's referring to computer programming, is no longer a program of study. So again, though, with John and Al, you can reach out to Carol for some more direction on that. I have no other answers or questions, I'm sorry, in the question and answer panel. If anybody has any questions, we can sit here for a minute and see if any others pop in. We have about 15, almost 20 minutes left in the session.
So would everyone who rated themselves a 1 or a 2 now feel ready for Programs of Study 201? We hope so.
Some thank yous and yes, absolutely, it's coming through. Great job. So, and yes, definitely was a great job, ladies. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to either Ashley or me
Yes.
if you have any questions regarding programs of study, task list, SOAR, statewide agreements, and we'll do our best to get that information back to you.
Great.